Chinese scientists are experimenting with a mutant COVID-19 strain that reportedly has a 100% kill streak in mice. The new strain is called GXP2V, and it attacks the brains of mice engineered to reflect similar genetic makeup to humans, with most mice living just 8 days after being infected with this virus. Researchers report the mice lost weight, became sluggish, adopted a hunched posture, with their eyes turning completely white the day before they died. Now, this experiment, of course, brings back haunting memories from the 2020 pandemic. Let's bring in senior national correspondent Brian Endon, who is following this story, joins us live. Brian, the obvious question here, could this affect humans in the same way?
Well, we have to wait to find out that part of this. We've been looking over this research all day, Nicole, and obviously, like you said, anytime you hear about China doing some kind of COVID research, it does send off alarm bells, when you think back to the way the whole pandemic may have started. So there is some reason to be concerned about this. And you mentioned some of the symptoms that these mice in this lab in China have after they were tested with this new strain of COVID. Lost weight, sluggish, eyes turned white. Again, though, for us, I think the biggest concern is what kind of research are they doing, and is there the possibility of another lab leak? Could that be a problem here? We spoke to an infectious disease doctor at Florida International University. She says it's too soon to be alarmed, that it's possible this research could end up being good, could actually help prevent COVID in the future. This is what she had to say.
The studies themselves are, especially if they are well done and well contained in appropriate laboratories, are very useful for helping us get ahead of natural changes such that we can produce appropriate monoclonal antibodies, appropriate different types of enzyme inhibitors like protease inhibitors that can help us, again, get ahead and even produce better vaccines ahead of time before there's a major problem if it happens spontaneously.
And you heard the doctor there, Nicole, say if it's in an appropriate laboratory. I think that's the big question here. What kind of protocols are they taking in this lab? Should there be concern that it could possibly lead to some kind of leak? We don't know the answers to those questions yet. One of the big questions, though, has been about humanized mice. You mentioned that in your introduction. A lot of people I'd never heard of a humanized mouse. Basically, they're mice that are bred, so their immune system is similar to humans. But the doctor we spoke with emphasized that there are still some major differences.
But it's important to realize that they're still mice, and how a particular virus affects a mouse doesn't necessarily, even a humanized mouse, doesn't mean it's still a mouse. It's not going to necessarily reflect what's going to happen in a human.
Dr. Marty, who you heard from there from Florida International University, she says she was actually on a special team with United Nations that would go into laboratories around the world and make sure that they're following protocols and not doing anything dangerous. And she said based on what she knows with this situation in China, which we don't know a ton about, but based on the little information that we do have, she says she hopes that one of these teams will go in there and make sure that everything is being done safely. Because again, when you hear China and you hear COVID and you hear mice and you hear new testing, it obviously gets a lot of people worried, Nicole.
Yes, it does. All right, Brian Endon, thank you.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.
Have we learned nothing from the coronavirus pandemic? New reporting suggests Chinese laboratories just can't help themselves. According to the Daily Mail, Chinese scientists have reportedly developed a mutant coronavirus strain that attacks the brain and has a 100% kill rate in mice. Worse, they admit there's a risk it could spill over to humans. The virus is a modified version of a strain found in pangolins and was tested on mice, expressing a protein found in humans to test that the disease might impact people. Reportedly, all mice infected with the virus died between 7 and 8 days after being infected, with symptoms including their eyes turning completely white, rapid weight loss, and fatigue. Researchers additionally found significant viral load in the mice's brains, lungs, noses, eyes, and windpipes.
While the potential for a new pandemic could be rising here at home, pandemic prevention measures have done a full 180. Oakland's new COVID policy is allowing even students who test positive for the coronavirus to attend classes. As long as the child is asymptomatic, they can go to school, though they are encouraged to wear a mask.
Here to discuss the coronavirus and this potential new mystery disease out of China is Alina Chan, scientific advisor at the Broad Institute of MIT and Harvard and co-author of Viral, The Search for the Origins of COVID-19. Welcome back to Rising, Alina.
Thanks for having me.
So, if it is possible to calm us down, to make us less fearful, please do so. But I know you'll be as honest and blunt as necessary. What is this? Is this study somehow not as bad as it seems? What's going on?
Yes, the wording in this study is a bit unfortunate because the pandemic virus, SARS-CoV-2, also causes 100% of humanized mice to die. So it's not clear, based on this new letter, whether or not the pangolin virus is more concerning than the pandemic virus. But it is yet another example where the public is only learning about risky virus research once it is done and published. That's when the public finds out. So people don't get to find out before the work is done. That is apparently no consultation. And what this means is that if these viruses had not been published, and if they unfortunately leaked from a lab, there would be no way for the public to tell if this was from nature or if it came from a lab, if it had been genetically enhanced. So this is a real concern for the world.
What do we know about the safety protocol in effect at the lab where this study was done? As I understand it, a big part of the negligence with respect to COVID-19 was that the kind of equipment being used at the lab was insufficient for the virality of the virus that was being created.
So just to clarify, this wasn't the Wuhan lab. This was a separate lab in a different part of China. But typically, these types of viruses had been handled at pretty low biosafety, at BSL-2. So at this level, there's almost no tracking of lab escapes. So if you had been infected by a virus like SARS-CoV-2 that has only mild symptoms, there's no way you would have caught that and traced it back to the lab and had an investigation. So this letter that came out about the pangolin virus actually did not state at what level of biosafety the experiments were done. So it could have been low, it could have been high, there's no way to tell. So I think this is yet another reminder that we can't let scientists self-regulate on these sort of experiments, because the benefits are unclear of the study, but the risks are real. So the risk could impact billions of people around the world. So a scientist might act on a dangerous idea at inappropriate biosafety, and unfortunately billions of people pay the price. So this is yet another reminder that we can't just let scientists do whatever they want.
And as a reminder for viewers, the difference in the kind of lab safety protocols between the U.S. and some labs in China has actually been revealed to be a selling has been a selling point for doing the research. We've covered on the show from U.S. Right to Know doing this reporting showing that one of the grants that EcoHealth Alliance was trying to get, specifically was persuading the oversight officials that it would be done, the research would be done in the U.S. But there's that note where they're saying, but once we get it approved, we can actually do it in China, where there's less to worry about in terms of oversight.
Yes, so the jump in cost is very dramatic. Between a low biosafety level to a higher biosafety level, it can mean millions of dollars of difference, and also in personnel training. So unfortunately, a lot of research programs nowadays are trying to do as much as possible with as little money as possible. So sometimes this means that biosafety costs are cut. So people make estimates of how risky is this work? Can I get away with doing it at a lower biosafety level? And I think that after the pandemic happened, clearly this is no longer acceptable. I think most virologists even would look at this and think, no, we can't be cutting costs on biosafety. Yeah,
most virologists, and probably I haven't taken a poll, but I bet 80-90% of people read a headline like this, that this experiment was done, and say, what? We're still doing this kind of thing, and we're not doing it under it'd be one thing to do it in Antarctica or on the moon or something, but we're doing this in the same kind of, potentially at least, the same kind of circumstances.
Yes, that's right. So these labs, no matter what the biosafety level is, they tend to be located right smack in the middle of a city. So if a scientist unfortunately gets exposed to a virus gets infected. He doesn't even know that they've been infected. They walk out to like the nearest Starbucks or something, and boom, like the whole city's infected within like a month or two, right? So this could have been what happened in Wuhan in 2019. Unfortunately, is that working with these viruses with unknown pandemic potential, you don't know what symptoms they cause, you don't work with them at the highest biosafety level, and there's no way to track incidents of exposure. And someone just walks out in the middle of the city and boom, all the hospitals, the local market, the train stations, that just covered in virus. So I think that we can't keep coming back to this conversation every time there's a new concerning paper. There should be more proactive action being taken to increase oversight globally on this type of research.
Can you speak to what kind of oversight mechanisms are possible here? The article references Chinese scientists. Are they Chinese scientists under the auspices of the Chinese government? Are they American-affiliated scientists in a lab, the way we had with the last pandemic? And what are the implications with respect to oversight if it's one or the other?
So currently, I think that the norm is that each institute decides for themselves really what is appropriate or not. And they also self-govern their own biosafety levels. So there's some responsibility to tell the funders, so people who give them money to do this work, what the safety level is. But at the end of the day, there's no mechanism to enforce, like handing over all your lab records and biosafety incident records should an accident happen. So I would say that, unfortunately, it is kind of like the Wild West. So this is what some of the top research funding agency leaders in the UK and US said, that it is like the Wild West. You don't know what's happening. You don't know what biosafety level at which this work is happening. You only find out later when there might have been a potential mishap.
Lena Chan, thank you so much for joining us. I remain very fearful, but we appreciate your expertise.
Thank you.